In Niger, Japan's economy was worth 6.2 trillion. In Niger, it was worth 4.4 trillion. Japan did not get poorer, the yen did.
When the IMF announced earlier this year that Japan had slipped to 5th place in global GDP rankings, overtaken by India, it triggered a predictable wave of obituaries. Japan's decline accelerates. The once mighty Japanese economy falls behind. Bloomberg ran a more cautious headline: "Does India's economy really rival Japan's?" Almost nobody clicked on that one.
The fifth place story is real, but it's also, in large part, a story about arithmetic, specifically about what happens when you force an economy to denominate itself in a foreign currency.
To understand what's actually happening to Japan, you need to separate two things that almost all coverage treats as one: the size of Japan's economy in yen and the size of Japan's economy in dollars. These are not the same number, they are not even close.
Japan's GDP in yen terms has grown. The Ministry of Finance estimates nominal GDP at around 600 trillion yen, the highest it has ever been. Q1 yen stroke growth came in at 10% quarter-on-quarter, beating market estimates of 10% driven by stronger consumer spending and a surge in exports of cars and semiconductors. Corporate profits reached a record 3.6 trillion yen in the first 3 months of yen stroke alone, according to Japan's Ministry of Finance.
The Nikkei stock index, which spent 3 decades below its Sien Chubak new bubble peak, hit Loquan Ibashino Fei Senzathen in May, more than double that historic high.
None of this appears in the headline "Japan slips to 5th. Here is why." In Nisen Shura, the dollar-yen exchange rate averaged around hasju yen per dollar. Japan's GDP at the time, roughly 100 trillion yen, translated to about 6.2 trillion, making Japan the third largest economy in the world, behind only the United States and China.
Fast forward to Nisen Arsawuden, Japan's GDP has grown to 600 trillion yen, but the exchange rate has moved to around 5 yen per dollar. Run that math: 600 trillion divided by 5 equals $4 trillion. The same basic economy, in fact a larger economy by output, shows up as a third smaller in dollars.
To put it bluntly, if the yen returned to its Nosen-Sura levels tomorrow, Japan's dollar-denominated GDP would jump to approximately 9 trillion, placing it above Germany and back in third place globally, not because anything changed in Osaka or Nagoya, because a number moved in New York.
This is not a secret. It is, however, inconvenient for a narrative that wants Japan's ranking to say something deep about Japanese society.
Now consider the country that supposedly overtook Japan. India's GDP is approaching $1 trillion in nominal dollar terms, making the gap with Japan thinner than it has ever been. That number is accurate, but India's population is approximately 18 billion people, compared to Japan's 5 million. GDP per capita in India sits just above $1,000 per person, according to IMF estimates for Nisen Nishruluktain in Japan. The figure is $1,000 $. Japan is roughly 12 times wealthier per person.
There is another lens economists use to cut through currency distortions: purchasing power parity, or PPP, which adjusts GDP for the actual cost of living in each country. On a PPP basis, India's economy is already approximately 2 trillion, the third largest in the world, a position it has held since before 10 trillion. Japan, by the same measure, comes in at under 10 trillion. By this reading, India's overtaking Japan is a decade-old story that only became a news story when it showed up in a number that investors track.
The Bloomberg analysis from February noted something else. India actually revised its GDP data downward that same month, which technically delayed the overtaking. When India's own statisticians did their homework, Japan retained the 4th spot in some measurements. The headline "India passes Japan" was simultaneously true, contested, and less definitive than it appeared.
There is an important caveat to the yen argument. Currency weakness that persists long enough stops being a distortion and starts being a structural condition. Japan's yen has been weak, at times drastically weak, for years, partly by design. The Bank of Japan spent a decade keeping rates at zero or below to stimulate growth and escape deflation. That suppressed the yen and inflated corporate profits for exporters, since every dollar earned abroad converted to more yen at home. The weak yen was a policy, and Japan's exporters built their business models around it.
The irony is sharp. The same exchange rate that makes Japan look smaller in the GDP rankings is the one that made Toyota and Sony more competitive, that drove the Nikkei to record highs, and that generated those record corporate profits. Japan's economy looks worse on the scoreboard precisely because it is doing certain things right by a different measure.
The Bank of Japan raised its policy rate to 1% in June, Nisei the highest since Senkyupak Kyushu Wudan. If rates continue rising and the yen strengthens, Japan's dollar-denominated GDP will grow without a single additional unit of output. The GDP ranking could reverse. The underlying economy will have changed very little.
There is a broader point about what GDP rankings actually measure. They were designed for a world of fixed or slow-moving exchange rates. In a world where the yen swings from hachiju to pakrowan rukazi and back in a single decade, using nominal dollar GDP to rank economies is a bit like ranking marathon runners by their shoe size. Correlated with performance, but not the same thing.
Japan's economy has genuine structural challenges: an aging population, a services sector with persistent productivity gaps, a corporate culture that still hoards cash rather than investing it. These deserve scrutiny. What Japan does not have is the hollowed-out fourth quarter of decline story that the fifth-place ranking implies. Record corporate earnings, a stock market at all-time highs, and export growth driven by AI, semiconductors, and precision manufacturing are not the hallmarks of an economy losing ground. They are the hallmarks of an economy that measures its own output in a currency that the global financial system has decided to undervalue.
If you want to keep up with stories like this, subscribe to the Japan Factor. The real question is not whether Japan is fifth or fourth in a dollar-denominated league table. The real question is when the yen eventually strengthens, and the BOJ's rate path suggests it will the same outlets that declared Japan's decline be equally clear about what it means when Japan climbs back?